Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn with Action Coach Solly Hill. Welcome to all those that are joining on Facebook as well as LinkedIn, and not forgetting the ones on Zoom. So please do say hi, comment, ask questions as I go through today's webinar. So today I'm very excited to be talking to you all about sales. And as you can see on the screen, it's the sales machine. It's one of my favorite subjects because it's obviously an area that we can get instant results within our business. So the first area we need to discuss is our fundamental beliefs. And that's our core set of beliefs around sales. And it isn't just you, it's your salespeople as well. So what I want you to think about is, and so my question, I suppose, to all of you is, what do you believe about salespeople in general? Okay, so the majority of people in the majority of time, people come up with a whole bunch of negative words that you say about salespeople. If you describe a typical salespeople, it's what shows about your beliefs around those salespeople. So in other words, people often don't describe salespeople as a professional. They may describe them as being pushy or good at talking. And I suppose that the interesting part of all of this is when you think back, is that a typical description of a salesperson that we saw 10, 15, 20 years ago? But actually, salespeople these days may not be like that. And actually, what it shows is our beliefs around our thought process of what a salesperson actually is. And maybe you got away with those things of being a salesperson like that many years ago, but you don't get away with it anymore. Or maybe I should say that you don't succeed with it anymore. Then I'm going to ask you about, what are your beliefs about customers? What do we think about customers? Now, when I was working in hospitality, one of our big beliefs that we used to ask people when we recruited them was, do you believe that the customer is always right? So my question to you is, do you think that the customer is always right? Well, many of you may think that that's not the case. Okay, many of us see customers as maybe being a pain, that they don't buy anything or they won't buy anything. But again, that shows that our negativity can creep in. But my question to you is, if you believe that the customer isn't going to buy anything, then the chances are that they won't. And that's down to your belief, not your actual customers. Okay, so let's look now at our beliefs around products and services. Now, in most cases, these are quite positive. Our beliefs, again, are that we believe in the product that we're selling, we believe in the service that we're offering. But again, there's a slippery negative that sometimes seeps in there. And this is the one that we'll get objections to. You can usually tell when a salesperson has a negative belief around a product or service, because that's where they will get all the objections from a prospective customer. So examining beliefs is really important. Okay, and one that's a really tough one for a lot of people to actually think about their belief within money, themselves, is about money. So again, my question to you is, what is your belief around money? As a salesperson, we have a personal perception about what is a lot of money. And the thing you have to ask yourself is that the same perception as my customer? Something that you may personally find expensive may be something that somebody else finds reasonably priced. So therefore, think about what your beliefs are around money. So I'll give you an example of how our beliefs around money often affects our salespeople. And I always think about a story that Brad always shares with us, in that he worked with a group of salespersons in one company where he worked with one lady in particular. And she started out as an assistant in the sales area. Okay, she's really well. She got given a promotion to take on an area of sales. She was given a small area and she built it up so that area was performing well. And she was making, for a set off, about 50 grand's worth of revenue per year. So brilliant. She got promoted to a bigger territory, which if she just maintained those sales within that area, then she would be making 70 or 80,000 pounds a year. She could have gone up to 100, 120 a year. But this isn't actually what happened. She actually declined sales, and by that meaning that she didn't maintain them, she dropped in sales, and she held sales back. And guess how much she made? She made about 50 grand in that year. Now, after a brief chat to that kind of lady, what Brad discovered was that she had belief structures around money. Okay, and she felt that she couldn't earn more than what her dad was earning per year. And her dad was earning, and you guessed it, 50 grand a year. So therefore, you need to start as a business owner, start examining people's beliefs around money, or your own beliefs around money, and especially with sales and a commission-orientated role, as they're going to make more money if they do well. They need to have that desire or belief that they can make more money and need to make more money, or they want to make more money. That's what it's all about. So when salespeople have commitments, and it could be mortgage or children or other commitments, those are the type of people that are not, it would be nice to make a sale. Those are the ones that believe that they must make sales. They really perform when they have the desire, the passion, and fundamentally the belief. It's really powerful. So what I want you guys to do out there is sit down with your salespeople, or just with yourself in a notepad, and do an exercise or two and ask yourself, describe a typical salesperson. And that will tell you your beliefs. Describe a typical customer. And then you'll start to think and understand what your customers are about, and thinking about your beliefs about your customers. Now, if they don't have a positive image around salespeople, you're going to struggle. If you don't have a positive image around customers and for the potential for customers to spend a lot of money in your business, then they're going to struggle. So let's look at sales. As you can see on the screen, the sales decisions are based on logic and emotions. Now, as a salesperson, if you were to think about what your, oops, there we go. So let's look at sales. What we find that these are two decision-making biases, logic and emotions. So most people seem to market and sell to logic. Okay, so most purchases, many of you may be surprised to know that most purchases are based on 20% logic and 80% emotion. So it's the reason that you're not getting many sales is because you're not getting to people's buying emotions. You're not getting to the emotional needs, the wants, the desires of the person. All you're trying to do is, in essence, is to make sure the person has all the logical reasons to buy. Okay, logic is wonderful. We still need logic. People need it. They need logic to justify to other people. So, for example, it's like if you go out and buy the newest, latest, greatest car, and then they come home and they start telling people about it. Now, you're not going to turn around and say, well, I bought that car so that my ego feels better. And I'm not going to say to you that I bought that car just so that people see me, they'll know I'm rich and I'm doing well and things are going good for me. People don't tell you those emotional reasons, even though that's why they bought it. They tell you things. Oh, it's great engineering. You should see this and you should see that. And wow, the brakes and this and the stereo. They go through all the logical parts of it to justify the fact that they've made an emotional decision. So logic is important. I'm not saying don't use it with emotion. If you're going to get to the emotional reasons why people actually want to buy, then they're not actually going to get a lot of sales. In most cases, I've watched too many salespeople focus on too much logic. The sales cycle is an emotional sale decision. Purchase decisions are emotional, and we've got to use them. So what's sales all about? It's about communication. It's so, so important. And as it says on the slide, true communication is the response you get. So what you get back from somebody is really the true communication level. And it's really fundamental. It takes a while to get your head wrapped around it, actually. But simply put, if you're sat in front of a prospective client, you're either selling to them on the fact that you and your product and service can help them, or they're selling to you on the fact that you can't. And one key thing to remember is that somebody always walks away with a sale. And so it's up to you to really work out who is going to make that sale. So think about your last sales conversation you had. Who walked away with the sale? Was it you, or was it your prospective customer? Did they convince you that your product or service wasn't good enough, wasn't for them? How many of your salespeople are getting outsold by their customers? Or are you getting outsold by your customer? So when we get really good at communication, that's what we need to get good at, basically. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. The first thing that we have to understand about communication is we have to understand it, basically. And there's 3 tools of communication. Now, I've got on the screen words, voice, and body language. And this was, in fact, a study that was done by Kodak, who did an amazing study. It was quite a few years ago now, but I still think that the figures are quite relevant in today's industry and today's society. And it was looking at how communication was made, and they did the percentage. So the results show that words only communicated 7% of your message. The voice communicates 38%, but body language communicates a massive 55% to people. So when you're sitting down and looking at sales again, another question to you would be, how much body language training have your salespeople had or yourself had? So think about it. People get trained in how to use the right words, but they never get trained in anything else. Okay. And it's just like one thing that really resonates to me at that point is, when you're going through school, we often get asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay. And you never hear about people wanting to set up their own business. You never get kind of education on how to set up your own business. And it's the same with communication. We always get trained how to use the right words, but we never get trained in anything else. So if you think about it, you're only getting trained in 7%. So if all you're sitting down and working with words with your salespeople, just think how much more you're missing out on. You've also got to look at their voice. So you've got to listen to see how they feel, how they come across. Is there excitement in their voice? Is there energy? Just think of all those phone calls we've had from telemarketers who just drone on and on and on. What if they spoke with excitement and energy? Would it get you interested in hearing more? So record your sales calls. Get your salespeople to listen back. Critique them, because I'm certain that once they hear maybe the tone of their voice or the language that they're using, they'll change it. They'll improve it. They'll get better. And then there's body language, the look, the feel of the person when they're sitting with you. Body language is so important. Even if you're on the phone, if you're slouching and playing on the computer when they're speaking to you, it still has a massive impact on the way that the communications come across. Because believe me, if I've sat there in my chair like this, and not really caring about the webinar, it'll come across in the tone of my voice. But if I'm sat upright, I'm looking at you, I'm interested, I've got my body faced forward, it has a massive impact on that communication as it's coming across to you as a prospective customer. Now, this is where we talk about match and mirror. And it's about that body language, okay? And it's part of the NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. First thing that NLP says, it's with the voice and words, but also the body language, is to match and mirror so that you build an unconscious rapport with your prospective client. If you've got a prospect that's sitting there with their arms folded and leaning forward, and you're sat there leaning forward with your arms wide open, you're not building a rapport whatsoever. But if you kick back, you cross your arms and you talk to them until gradually they move with you. So you cross your arms to mimic them, to match them. You then start unfolding your arms. Chances are is that they will copy you. Okay? It's not about mimicking, because you'll look stupid. Okay, so in other words, if they cross their arms, you cross your arms. If they uncross their arms, you uncross your arms. It will look silly. So don't mimic them. And eventually you'll get that unconscious, conscious and competent. So what does that mean? I mean, well, in learning, we all start out with an unconscious incompetence. Something we don't even know. It's like when you're a kid, you don't even know that you don't know how to drive a car. Eventually you learn. I mean, you don't know how to drive a car. That's called a conscious. So when you don't know something, that's called an unconscious incompetent, because you're not aware of it and you don't know how to do it. But as you grow older, you know that it's something that you don't know, and that's called a conscious incompetence. You then get to that conscious competence stage, and that's where you take your first driving lessons. So if you really think about it, you can drive the car, and then eventually, as we all do after we've passed our test, we get to that unconscious incompetence stage where you don't have to think about it and you're just doing a great job, and that's unconscious. And it's true for matching and mirroring, because it's true for all aspects of sales and success, that gradually we get to the point where we're actually very good matching and mirroring without even having to think about it in the beginning. So match, mirror, use the same body language, use the same voice, the tone, and the same words. So now we're thinking about communication. And one thing that we really need to focus on is the different ways that people communicate, learn, and understand. It's really important. How do you know that somebody is a visual person? So as you can see on the screen, there are 3 types of learning, ways that people learn and communicate and understand. That's visual, auditory, so audio, and kinesthetic. So how do you pick up that somebody is a visual learner? How do you pick up that somebody is audio? How do you pick up that somebody is kinesthetic? Obviously, the words that they use are so important. So if for example, and the best way to use this to understand it is using an example. So somebody's coming in and they're looking to buy a car. So if they say to you, wow, that looks really great. I love the color on that. Super bright. I could see myself in that type of car. You can understand that they're visual, because everything that they're referencing to is visual. It looks great. I love the color. Super bright. I can see myself. Now, if somebody is visual, that's obviously what I've just said, that somebody's visual, they're using all the examples of seeing. But if somebody's audio, they walk in, how will you know? I'd love to hear that. How's the stereo on this thing? What does it sound like? Is the exhaust really loud? Everything that they're asking is going to an audio kind of answer. Now, they're not always going to be that easy. And sometimes a kinesthetic person will walk in, they'll touch and they'll touch the car and go, wow, that paint feels really smooth. And let me feel the leather inside. Let me sit in it and see how it feels. So it's all about that touchy-feely aspect. But it's also about looking at the actual person. And sometimes that can give you a clue. So a visual person, you can almost tell them by the way that they look. Everything about them is polished and in place. They won't have a hair out of place. Everything is matching perfectly. And you can tell by the level of visualness, by, of that aspect. The kinesthetic, on the other hand, you can always tell is that they want to feel comfy. So in other words, a visual person might have top of the range high heel shoe, that looks amazing. A kinesthetic person will probably and will rarely be wearing shoes that will hurt. They just want them to be comfortable. Well, why is this important? Because this comes down to the way that we communicate. If you've got a visual person talking to a kinesthetic person, sometimes it'd be like they're talking 2 different languages. So let's look at this and the kinesthetic visual, and not just feeling right. This one is about not just the right way for us, but if you change how you communicate and match mirror their communication style, it can be really powerful. So here's a breakup of the market in general. As you can see on the slide, 40% of the market is visual. 20% of the marketplace is auditory. and 40% of it is kinesthetic, the touchy-feely people. So we as salespeople working in the marketplace, what we've got to do is actually put it all together and make sure that we're communicating in the right way to those people. So let's go back to that car. Okay. So when a visual person comes in and they're wanting to buy that car, what you need to do to be able to sell it to them is get them in the car. Take a picture. Let them see how it looks for them to be in the car. For an audio person, take them on a test drive. Okay. Turn up that stereo. Listen to the engine rev. Listen to how it sounds. You know, if it's an electric car, how quiet it is. You know, for a kinesthetic, let's go for a test drive. How does the car feel when they're driving it? So therefore, you're selling to their mode of communication. But then there's also behavioral styles. So in behavioral styles, we normally use what is called a DISC profile. And as I'm bringing it up on the screen, you will see it. Oops, let's go back. There we go. So we use a DISC profile called D-I-S-C, so DISC. And if you're making notes, what happens, what might be easier for you guys to do out there is do a square box like you can see on the screen, and put your D's and your I, S and your C in there, and then make notes as I'm talking it through. So what is a D? Okay, a D person, D is for dominance, okay? I is for influence, S is for stability, and C is for compliance. Okay, so let's break it down. So a D person is somebody who's dominant, who's decisive, who is a decision maker. Okay. I is for influence, those people who are very kind of influenced by the environment around them. So they want to be kind of have the new shiny thing, that they are trendsetters. Okay, they're influenced by the people, like I said, the people around them. S is for stability. Now, these people are the steady ones, where it comes to purchasing something, they're stable, they're steady. So when it comes to purchasing something, they will purchase something that they've had before. And C is from compliance. So they're the high detailed orientated people. Okay. So when we break this down, we'll notice that the D's and the C's, as you can see on the screen, the dominant and the compliance, are real task orientated people. Whereas the I's and the S's are the influences and the stability are more people orientated people. And then we've added at the top the D's and the I's that are more outgoing, and at the bottom the S and C's are more reserved. So that's your profile matching, your behavioral profile match. So now when we meet people for the first time, how do you find out who's D, I, S or a C? You know, so the first question that you have in your head when you meet a prospective client is, are they outgoing or are they reserved? Are they more task orientated or people orientated? And this will help us define which one of them they become. Okay, because again, this is how people buy, and how they communicate is one aspect, and how they make a purchase decision is a very important factor in knowing what they do. So the high D, the dominant style person, their personality is an outgoing, task-orientated people, but they won't take long to buy. These are the people that love being number one. They're the leader of the pack. They're always out to try new things. So when you're going to sell to them, if you try and sell something that's old, steady way of doing it, they're not going to buy it. Okay. If you turn around to them in your script and say, this is the newest, latest, brightest one, not many people have this yet, you'd be the first person to have it. All of a sudden, you've got them there. You've got them in your corner and they're saying, wow, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I'm after, you know, this type of thing. So the D is a very dominant style, wanting to be number one, always likes the newest, greatest, latest stuff. And the I is the influence. Now, these people like to be friends. So, for example, if you went into an office and you looked at their desk, it's got lots of photos of their friends on it. So if you had a high D that was planning an office move, they would delegate it to somebody else to make sure that it happened in a heartbeat. The high I, if they were planning an office move, they would make sure that everybody was there and participating at all levels. So a high I is very much about those people, and they will buy from people. They like to get to know people. They like to buy from people they get along with. If they don't spend time with them as a person and get to know them as a person, they're not going to buy from you. And this, and this is the orientation of that person. So if you're high D and you're trying to sell to a high I, usually you come across as quite offensive because you're getting straight to the task in hand, you're getting straight to the point. You won't even ask them about their family or whether they've got friends or do they like this or what do they do at the weekend. High D potentially could come across as abrupt. But the high D will think that they've done nothing wrong. And it's the same the other way around. So if you're high I and you're talking to a high D, the high I will be like going, so what did you do at the weekend? How's this going? How's that going? The high D is like, get to the point. So again, when you're coming as a salesperson, sometimes you have to adapt what your natural style is. Everybody has a natural disc profile. Then we also have an adapted, and it's understanding how people want to be communicated with that will increase your sales. So for example, we always class a high D as a hunter salesperson. They're a hunter. They'll go out and they'll see a bunch of customers out there and they will get one and they'll be happy. Whereas the high I will wander down, see 20 potential customers, and they'll start building relationships with them and they'll farm them. So it's the hunter versus the farmer. And it's how people make decisions when they're buying off you. If you've got high D orientated customers, they want to make that decision instantly. I'm also sure that if you've got high I people, they'll want to become your friend, and you almost need to not talk about the product or service because you need to build the relationship. Because eventually they'll say, let's just do it. Let's just crack on with the service or the product. And you may not have even discussed any of the details with them. It's just because they like you and therefore they're going to buy from you. So let's look at an S. They're steady. Someone who kind of will want the same as they had the last time. They don't want to change, but they are still people orientated, but they're less outgoing as the I. They don't want to see things differently. They like things to be the same. So again, if this was a person, if they looked at your desk, everything would always be in the same position on their desk. If you look at the desk, now that's their desk because they're always there. They're the hardest workers in the entire group because they sit there, they work, they do the job they need to do, and they're happy to do the same job every day. If you try to sell to them, so for example, if I came in, I was talking to a high S, and I was saying, it's the newest, it's the latest, it's the greatest, they're going to run for the hills because they want the same as the last, okay? Doing the same thing. So for example, if we go back to the car analogy, okay, if you're looking at the car analogy, then they wouldn't, and they've always bought a Ford car, no matter what you do, they will never buy a Lamborghini. Okay, because they like warranties, they like guarantees, they like the sort of stuff that gives them the long-term kind of security. Okay, but high S is a great companion to a high D because they clean up all the mess when D leaves. Okay, so finally, we've got the C, the compliance. They are the detailed orientated people. Literally, when they can finest detail on everything, because this is the type of person that they are. And time again, we're sitting there looking at them, thinking, what on earth are you asking? I mean, if you're a high D or a high I, you sort of sit there going, will this person ever make a decision? Well, yes, they will. Okay, but it will take them time. So again, as a salesperson, it's understanding the traits and the behavioral patterns of all different people. One size doesn't fit all. We're all different. Okay. So we have to do our sales process, our decision-making process, and tailor it to whatever behavior personality we have in front of us. So you've got to understand your sales process and why communication is so important, but also behavioral profile is important. So imagine if you learn this stuff and you become very good at it, and somebody walks in with a high I and kinesthetic, you'll instantly know how to sell to them. So if you get a visual high S, again, you'll know how to sell to that type of person. So it's all about communication. So what I want you to do is think about yourself, and as action coach, Solly Hill, we do offer a free mini disc profiling. So at the end of this, I'll pop that into the chat for you. Download it, have a look to see what your profile is. Do you recognize the traits of yourself? And from me describing what a DIS and a C is, are you understanding what your DIS profile is? Because the more you learn and the more you read about it, the easier it is to actually make decisions with your customers to assist them in that buying process. So now we're going to talk about questions. So questions are the key to sales, okay? And it's the highest priority when it comes to our communication process, okay? It's questioning. And most salespeople are not good at mastering questions. So most salespeople, and it's maybe a generalization out there, so please teach me wrong, talk too much, okay? So I want you to think, okay, if you look at yourself, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, okay? Use them proportionate. Listen twice as much as you speak. And if you think about it, if you're doing all the talking and then your customers are coming up with the objections, your customers will then come up with the objections. But if your customer is doing all of the talking because you're asking the right questions, then guess what? They're selling themselves. And the whole aim in sales is to get them to make the sale for you. Your job is to ask enough questions that they make the sale, that it becomes a no-brainer. And it's so powerful when you've got a customer talking themselves into buying your product or service. And it's fundamentally down because you are asking the right questions. So the better we get at asking questions, the better we get at making sales. So when you sit down and look at it, are you sales scripts or your sales scripts should have on there a lot of questions. So again, it's all about that questioning process. So I find the sales process works this way. So as you can see on the screen, you ask a question and you get an answer, okay? Ask another question, you'll get another answer. And again, and again. And it will continue until eventually they will ask you a question. And at that point, as you give the answer, that is where the sale is made or lost. So the moment they ask you a question, it's where a sale can potentially be made. So how do we make that happen? Now there's two different ways of looking at sales, and that's there's an old way and a new way. And there's the diamond way, and as you can see, 2 upverted triangle way. Okay. I'm just going to fill all of these in on the slide. So as you can see, you can spend a lot of time selling in the old way. We'll look at the diamond first, okay? And you can spend a lot of time selling and then you spend very little time doing anything else, okay? Whereas nowadays, the style that should be made or should normally be used is where you spend a lot of time upfront building rapport. So there's a lot of time, as you can see from that triangle, a lot of time building rapport, get to know that person, get to look at them. What are they doing? Where are they? What is, their family, their friends, their business, their products, their services, okay? And it's just like us at Action Coach, okay? It's a franchise business. So when we look at someone to become a franchisee, the first and most important thing is that we spend a lot of time building rapport with people. So how much rapport can you build? And therefore, you can build loads, and therefore you get great results. And then the selling is relatively easy because you've learned what type of communication that they are. You build a rapport with them, and then the follow-up. The follow-up becomes very easy because the follow-up really is a natural follow-on from building the rapport. Okay. So if you look at your sales right now, which way are you selling? Are you building only a little bit of rapport? Are you selling lots? Are you following up only slightly? Or are you building loads of rapport, and within that rapport, you're actually doing the sales process, and then you're doing loads of follow-up? Because, when we looked at people coming on board coaching, we don't actually sell anybody coaching. We sell them an understanding what coaching is and whether it's right for them, and help them make the decision. Because if you sell someone coaching, they don't stay around for long. If you have someone buy coaching, they'll get results. They'll want to stay around for a long time. But we know we have to spend a lot of time building that rapport and allowing that process to happen. So when it comes down to it, people make the decision themselves. There's very little selling that needs to be done. So again, my question to you is, which way are you selling right now? Where are you investing most of your time? And that will also determine whether you get good long-term sales out of a potential company and they become a customer for life, or whether they're a short-term customer and you don't get any repeat business from them. A long-term sale comes from great rapport, which allows great follow-up, and even better rapport with follow-up that comes because you've done that. If all you've really done is sell to somebody they feel sold to, and therefore they don't usually come back to buy more from that business. So remember now, I'm not saying don't be pushy. All I'm saying is be pushy and build rapport. Don't be pushy and sell. Build the level of knowledge about the customer, about what they want and what they need, about who they are. Let them understand who you are, why you're selling this, why you believe in the product. Get to know them and let them get to know you. Every business can do an element of this, whether you're in retail, whether you're in a restaurant. You can always build rapport with your person that comes into that shop, into that restaurant. Okay. So when you're building, you need to kind of think, when you're building your kind of sales process and your questions, all comes into a bit of a funnel, as I'm putting up on the screen. Okay, here we go. So it's all about a question funnel. And this is what I really want you to think about your questions that you're asking. Okay. So generally, where does it work? Generally, where does it start of the funnel? We ask open-ended questions. Who, where, what, when, how, and why. Okay. Because they're open-ended, they build rapport. Okay. They're the ones that get the customer talking. We get them speaking to us. It's so important. They then relax. Okay, we then become more specific in our questions, because the last thing that we want to do is start with specific questions. So start asking those open-ended questions first, then move on to the specific ones. So classic open-ended questions. What made you decide that you wanted to pick this type of product? Why do you think it'd be really important what is it that's really important in buying this service for you? Open the conversation. Classic example of this is when you go into a shop, and there's normally somebody towards the beginning of the door, and they say, "Hi, can I help you?" It's a really specific and closed question. It's either a yes or a no. And the majority of the time it's a no, because that's what we say. Can I help you? No, just looking. So what happens if that person turned around and said to us, have you been in our store before? What would you say? Well, no. Oh, that's fine. Let me show you where we've got everything situated, and that way, children's is down there if you're in a clothing shop, women's is that way, gents is that way, thanks for coming back in. Or if you said yes, I thought I recognized you from before, thanks for coming back in. Let me show you, how long has it been since that you've been in here? Great, let me show you some of the new stuff we've got in. so you can make a great decision. You know, questions like that, they're open-ended. You know, then go on to the, is there anything specific you're looking for in here today? You know, gradually, surely, the conversation is leading from open questions to those that are more specific. Questions once you've got more specific, and then you'll be able to look at solutions, okay? And then you'll be able to check their temperature with a more detailed question. So what does all this mean? So go back to the first and start, you know, when you're looking at the screen, let's go back to the beginning, okay? Those open-ended who, what, when, where, how, why, okay? Write them down, okay? Give an example of 3 or 4 good open-ended questions before you go and see a prospect, okay? That will give you the confidence as a salesperson to ask those questions. And once people start talking, it's amazing. And it will start to make them more specific. You'll be able to, once you get the answers from those open-ended questions, to become more specific, okay? And that's when we use more questions and get bigger and better, okay? So when you're thinking, when you look at the right-hand side, the play dumb and dig deep, okay? So even if you know the answer, play dumb, dig deep, okay? Don't assume you know the answer because it might not be the right one. And then ultimately you will get to some level of emotion. And going back to our slide previously, remember how much buying decisions are made on emotion, 80%. Okay, so that's why we really need to dig deep. We then offer those solutions. Okay, this is not the sale, this is offering solution. Now, based on what you've told me, I'm thinking that this or this or this or this could possibly be a solution. Then check the temperature. Which one of those do you think best fits what you had in mind? Or based on what you've said, which one of those do you think would be the best that would suit your budget? So we're not asking them to buy. What we're doing is checking the temperature. Which one of those would be the best? Okay, so you've always got to offer more than one solution to check their temperature. Okay, sometimes salespeople are really keen on just saying, this one, what about this one? You know, it's not a yes or no. So therefore, you've checked their temperature. You know, well, actually, A is the best option for me, or B is the best option for me. Okay. So would it be okay if I covered how we could get that shipped out to you? We could get that delivered to you next Wednesday or Thursday, which one suits? And that's when we start to actually close the sale. Now, most people make that big mistake of actually trying to close the sale by asking, do you want to buy or not buy? And actually, then you're turning it round to it's a buying decision. We should never be asked a yes or no question. And in specific, would you like to buy? Because if somebody said that to me, I'd kind of go, well, actually, no, I didn't come in here to buy. Actually, no, I'm going. The fastest way to convert to a sale is to actually come back to that detail-orientated question. So in other words, you know, does this fit? How does this fit with what you've got in mind? I think that's really great. Well, let's just get straight into it. What is the best day rate to deliver? Is that Wednesday or Thursday morning or afternoon delivery suit you best? You know, or if it's car, did you want that one in white? So ask that question to confirm the sale. When you're asking that question, always assume that you've got the sale. Because they've already made up their minds. They've already made that decision to buy. You've been through that whole sales process with them. You've checked their temperature. You've asked the questions. You've given solution and you've given them detail. And that's why you move forward. That's why you complete the sale. Not by asking, do you want to buy or not? You play the side by side. Should we deliver that Thursday, Friday? Or which credit card is it easier to process that on? So ask that detailed, orientated question and move forward with it. So then there's the question softness. And these are key when it comes to asking sometimes those awkward questions that you don't really want to ask, but it softens a question so people feel more comfortable. So can I just ask, would you like that? Should we deliver that on Wednesday or Thursday? You know, incidentally, do you have a budget in mind? You know, it makes it softer. By the way, I was thinking, you know, could that be a good idea? Well, by the way, would you prefer A or B? It, you know, you could always ask, you know, also one of the key questions that we always ask is, you know, is there anybody else involved in the decision-making process? Oh, by the way, can I just ask, is there anybody else involved in the decision-making process? It softens the question immediately. Okay. So it's a really big part in using those question softeners, as we call it, to get real results. One thing that I love is all about the purpose statement. Now, people sometimes get this, and sometimes you often have those blinding flashes of the obvious with the purpose statement. Now, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. I'm conscious of time, but it's your purpose statement, and it should start every sales purpose. And it's where you're asking permission from your prospective customer, you know, and you're going to tell them the process. So, for example, we have, you know, firstly, you should always ask the person for permission. So I'll go through the structure and I'll give you a few examples. So, for example, we have what we call a discovery call. So on that discovery call, I always turn around and say, so thank you so much for your time today. And I tell them what exactly we're going to do. With your permission, I'm going to chat to you today for about 20-25 minutes. I'm going to ask you a series of questions regarding your business. Then potentially we can look at solutions to move this forward. Is this okay with you? Yes or no? Okay, and then based on those outcomes, we will invest more time in getting to know each other, and this is what we're going to do. Okay, so you're highlighting exactly how that call is going to make for that customer. Okay, and that's key. You know, so for example, you know, you're thinking, oh, okay, that's coaching, that's not necessarily any other business. But if you're thinking about a restaurant, okay, so I'm a waiter, I'm going up to a table and say, hi guys, you know, we have a number of small plates. So what happens is everybody normally orders a few dishes, we share a few dishes. Can I recommend a few dishes that, if you like, there's some of my favorites. And generally at the end, I've got a couple of dessert dishes that are spectacular, which usually people like. So it can work either way. Let's start by taking some drinks orders, and then I'll come back, pick what 2 or 3 dishes each of you is after. And then all of a sudden, everybody on that table is thinking about 2 or 3 dishes that they want to order. Okay. And then you say, and then we'll look for if you've got room for dessert at the end. So again, this is what's going to happen. I'm asking permission. Okay. So then you need to look at the question cycle. And this is how the question cycle normally works. Okay, and I'll just pop it on the screen. Okay, we ask a question. Now, what you've got to do is then listen. And this is really hard for a lot of people out there. And it's not just done by sitting there. Okay, it's being attentive. Listening is done by 3 things. Number 1, take notes. Okay, if you're not taking notes, you're not listening. You're not listening well to a prospect. Always take notes. Let them see that you're taking notes, because if they see that you're taking notes, it makes them feel good about the fact that you are actively listening. And you're not going to be there. You're there because you're interested. Now, if you go back in a month's time or 2 months' time or whenever you're doing your follow-up, guess what? You've got your notes. Okay. So you've always got your notes. So first is take notes. Okay. Second thing is attentive listening, is body language. Are you nodding with the person? Are you tilting your head? Are you looking at them at the right time and you're doing that thing and you're doing that? Are you giving them a nod? You know, I actually believing through your body language that you are listening. Okay. And the third thing is the sounds that you're making, especially on the telephone. If you're talking to somebody on the phone, you ask them a question, do you go, yep, Yeah, great. Yeah, tell me more. What else? Yes, right. Okay, fantastic. Hang on. Let me just make some notes of that. Yeah, right. Hang on. Let me just make some more. All good. Yeah, thank you. And so what's happening is that you're giving them signals that you're actively listening. So people feel like they're being listened to. Okay. And you're giving them positive strokes. Well, thanks for your answer on that. That's really good. That's helped me devise a better solution for you. They can feel it, they can hear it. It's part of the way that you're acting. You're building rapport. Okay, you're matching and mirroring your ability to use the same communication as them, your ability to understand their behavior and buying style. Okay, you're helping. That positive stroke gives them desire even to answer the next question. So if they get to the end of answering a question, you haven't given them a positive stroke, then in most cases, they don't want to answer the next question. Whereas if you turn around and say, yeah, that's great, thanks, it's helped me, they want to keep on doing it. So the final slide for today is all about sales scripts. Now, most people kind of go, ooh, sales script. So what I want you to do is think about sales scripts. Okay, I want you to think about, this is not about how to have a list of pure kind of questions or dialogue written out word for word and you just sit there and say it verbatim, because then your personality doesn't come across. This is about having a script, having questions, having prompts, having kind of, as I put on there, what is your purpose statement? It's reminding you to say that purpose statement. It's remembering, as we went before, that's 3-4 questions to ask, those open-ended questions. What is the lead to the solution? What is the presenting your solution and detailing those questions? Okay. So I want you to think about, go back to all the steps of putting together your purpose statement. Okay, how do you ask for permission? How to get the outline, the process where you put the solutions in. How are you going to ask them for the transaction that they need to make the question? Take action. How are you going to get permission again? Okay, all needs to be scripted. You need to work it out as a team. If you've got a team of salespeople, then work it out as a team or work it out yourself. You've got to have a solid script, okay, because it becomes natural once you've used it a few times. Okay. So keep the first question really simple. On number 2, keep the first question really simple. Tell me why, remember those open-ended ones, why is it you feel you need a business coach? Why did you take this meeting with me? All of a sudden they'll start opening up about what they need and why and what they're doing. Okay. The third is that you need to lead them down towards a solution. Okay, your questions can't just go off in any willy-nilly direction. You actually need to lead them towards some form of solution. The questions have to move them in a direction that you want them to be directed to. Okay, and that's a great big part of getting great questions and great purpose statements right through from the sale. You need to lead them in a direction, help them make that decision. Okay, then we need to get more specific with our questions. Then we need to work out the way to present the solution to them. How do you actually present the solution? So once you present the solution, you need to check that temperature in the same way with detail-oriented questions. So how does it feel? Is that what you had in mind? Would you like that to be delivered on Wednesday or Thursday? No? Then, as I've got on the screen, it's that handle of the objections, okay? You're going to get objections as a salesperson. Everybody does. But what you'll realize is that if you actually sit down and write the list of objections that you're constantly been getting, then chances are you're leading them in your questioning to those objections, okay? And if you're getting them all the time, then you can design the way and the answer to those objection handling. But if you just take one thing from today, and that's what I want you to think about, we've covered lots in this webinar, okay, from behavioral to disprofiling, to communication, to scripts, to purpose statements. The key thing that I want you to remember is that sales is a learned task. It's a learned skill, okay? Nobody's born as a salesperson, okay? And sales fundamentally comes down to asking great questions. So if you get your great questions written down and asking, then your sales are going to come. So thank you for joining me today. I've loved having you all, and I look forward to welcoming you all on Wednesday when I am speaking to the lovely Susie Lau from SJ Corporate Events and learning about her business journey. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you then. Take care. Bye.